carry on and plan the sequel, because let's face it, baby, these days, you gotta have a sequel.
And welcome back to Micro Queers. It's your bi-weekly queer horror short roundup, and I'm Joe.
And I'm Trace, and we are discussing, a gay her with a car in Aidan Brezenick's short film Jeff Drives You. And I liked this one quite a bit, Joe. What about you?
Yeah, this was actually my favorite of the horror shorts that they did out of, I think it was Nightstream presented it, but it's technically the Slade short package from Brooklyn Horror. So the Brooklyn Horror Film Festival has been running this block of queer shorts for a number of years, and this was one of the picks that they did last year. And I just thought it was such an inspired, unconventional choice. And I love how intimate it gets and how unusual it gets. I just wish it hit a little harder in the end.
I honestly think that the coda is what kind of deflates it a little bit, because the coda turns it into kind of this like funny comedy, like dark comedy type thing. And it isn't, I mean, it is humorous throughout, because again, you're like the mere concept, oh, this guy is forming a relationship with a car unknowingly. It's also kind of karmic, right? Or maybe not, it's ironic because it's kind of repeating the story that he experienced, right? And then then it's like, oops, like it's just a fun tech experiment, la 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 la.
Yeah, I think it's like, here's an opportunity to make fun of Teslas and how people get attached to their cars, and you're like, no, but we don't need that. But maybe before we go further, so logline. The short is about David, who is played by Addison Heyman, and he is actually the writer of the short as well. And he is a lonely gay man who falls in love with Jeff, who is voiced by Tanner Rittenhouse, an artificially intelligent car over the course of a long road trip.
And he's on his way to a wedding, and this car has immediate thoughts about his attire and how he is choosing to go to this wedding with his suit already on.
That's the gay in the car, right? Like, oh, girl, no, you can't be wearing that suit. It's going to get all wrinkled. What are you thinking?
Very much so. And because I've seen a few other shorts dealing with, dealing with technology. Yes, that's a thing that happens. But it really it reminded me of a short I've seen where it's like, a grinder killer or a ride share killer, where someone gets in. And I kind of thought we were heading that way. And so this is really genre adjacent to me. And again, had the ending kind of gone a little bit darker, I think it would be more at home in the genre umbrella. But yeah, I found this very initially like charming and disarming before I was kind of like, oop, don't fuck that fleshlight.
I love that part. That's the part that sells this entire short for me, is the fact that it's like, oh, Jeff has a ready-made fleshlight so that he can get people to fuck him. And you're just like, oh, this car came prepared.
And he literally says, fuck me.
Yeah, he does. So apparently Hyman conceived of this because he read a story about an actual person who was fucking their car, and also, as you referenced, her. But I think that a lot of people, when they look at this, they immediately gravitate towards Black Mirror, which kind of tells stories about the darker side of technology. But really, the whole point of Black Mirror is that you see yourself reflected back in the dark screen, hence the title. And for me, I'm like, oh, this is about our like issues with intimacy and dependency. But also, as you mentioned, this is really about like trauma repeating itself within the queer community, right?
Yes.
Like, oh, David, you're so injured and you're afraid of being alone and you're such a sad sack gay. And then you just immediately pivot and do it to like a baby gay who just happens to be in car form.
Well, and that's the thing, right? Because he says, when I was 21, this happened to me. It was like a man in his probably 40s, he said. And, he tells the story and you're like, oh, like this really sucks. This man would do this to him. But in reality, it's like this man is probably just doing like his casual sex thing, and no ill intent was intended.
Maybe. I mean, part of this is that we're only given the perspective of David. So we can only know that he was very badly injured. It definitely reminded me of the kind of conversation that we had around Carter Smith's entry for Into the Dark.
Yes, in Midnight Kiss.
Yes, Midnight Kiss. Because, of course, the whole genesis, spoiler alert for a movie that's now almost 2 years old, but the whole point of that film was that it was a young queer who felt like he was on the outs, and he felt like he had been led astray by this older queer man and that he wasn't fitting in, and he ends up committing murder to fit in. But
yeah, and I mean, yeah, I do feel like, I mean, we don't have enough time to really go into the really specifics of the social construct of the queer community, specifically the gay male community.
Oh, what? You're not here all night? Come on. What else have you got to do?
No, but it is very much a thing where it's like, I feel like there are some men that are like, hey, I paid my dues, like, do your thing. And that's, yeah, it's kind of shitty how we just repeat this, as you said, the cycle of trauma on each other, cycle of abuse, whether we're intending to or not.
Yeah.
Which in some cases people actually obviously are, but at the same time, it's like, okay, but this car is clearly eliciting stalkery behavior.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of where the fun of artificial intelligence can come in, right? I mean, the car knows, like, it's no mystery that the car says, hey, why don't you watch this Pixar Disney film Up, right? Like, it clearly trolled David's social media, knew that he had watched that movie, knew that he liked it, or even composed some kind of algorithm based on his interests. So you're just like, oh, there's a darkness to what this car is doing. Like, there's a predatoriness to it.
But, and, you know, I regret almost even saying stalkery or predatory. Well, sorry, because I mean, again, it reminds me of being in high school. You know, I mean, I was out at 16, so I was dating people when I was 16, 17, 18, but I was very much, I would latch on to people. And not because I was like, oh, well, maybe it was obsession. I don't really know, but it was very much, I don't know any other queer people, so you're my one, and I have to make that work. And while our main character here is in his 20s in this story, that kind of goes back to what we're saying, though, you know, when it's like, oh, like a lot of people who don't come out and they have to fake who they are in their teens, and they come out in their later life, like they're essentially reliving their teens, especially emotionally, in that time period. So while I do think this car is creepy as all get out, if you put it through that lens of, oh yeah, but he's like a newly out queer being, it does make sense.
It does. Yeah. Like, I want to do everything to make sure that this guy likes me because we're going to be together forever. Because if we're not together forever, then who the fuck am I? Oh my God, I'm going to die alone. I'm terrified.
Very much so. And I think, though, then that's, I mean, again, like, I mean, I don't, to jump to that ending, like, it is kind of a thing where it's like, yeah, like, you know, there's emotional resonance here that balloon is popped by the entrance into just straightforward comedy and I guess satire.
Yeah, like it almost shifts and looks like what we're seeing is a behind the scenes of a car commercial. Like, we've got the car prominently displayed, the doors are up, it looks like a showroom, and we've got these jokey women who are just talking about so I messaged you after we initially watched it, and this is obviously the second time I've seen it, but I remembered him dying in the car. Like, I have vivid memories that the car actually kind of like committed a murder-suicide by driving into something. So to see David just randomly talking on the screen, complaining about, oh, I had a terrible experience with your pilot program here, I was like, oh, I did not remember the outcome, because I remember it being so much darker and feeling like, yeah, you're right, it's a bit of a deflated balloon when we decide, okay, well, let's play this for comedy, haha, at least we didn't kill someone this time.
I'm interested, though. So I mean, like, what you said, you remember it that way. Do you think they changed the ending for the release?
It's possible. I think I'm more likely misremembering, because the runtime is almost identical. I remember it being about 16 minutes, 18 minutes with the credits. But I think maybe it's just that I preferred the idea that this car would hurt him.
So you like created it in your mind and just like removed the one that exists.
Well, it seemed like the natural direction for the short to go in, because I think that's why this ending doesn't play quite as strongly. It's because you're not ready for it. Like, you're right, there are comedic moments throughout the short, but it's so character based and it's so about the intimacy. Like, I love that we're basically watching a relationship on hyper accelerated timelines, right?
And it even plays together to, like, I mean, again, in these times we're living in where a lot of people are communicating virtually, like, you know, and there are a lot of long distance relationships happening right now because people can't go see each other. Like, everything about this conversation rang very true. So I mean, like, I didn't feel a false note in this exchange outside of the fact that, yes, you're right, the car was clearly like had all this ammo on deck.
Yeah, I'm ready, I'm willing, and I'm able. But maybe
open.
And open in so many more ways than one. What did you think about the technical aspects of this film? Because really, what we're watching is almost the equivalent of a stage production, right? It's a guy by himself in a car, and that's the majority of the short. Like we see very little exterior shots.
I liked it, and I was honestly surprised and kind of happy that for the interface of the car itself of Jeff, I'm sorry, that they didn't choose to go with like a face of some sort. Like it's just the bubbles that change colors, and it adds a sense of menace to it. Like when our guy says something that kind of upset, something about like about the porn he's watching, how he can't jack off himself or something, and you just see like it cuts to the interface and you see it changing colors and like the bubbles inside kind of, I don't know, like I thought it was a really interesting effect when I think that the easy way out would have been, let's put a AI face on here.
Oh, I 100% thought we were going to get emojis and it's like the face would just go like, no. And I agree with you. I think the lava lamp feels like an old fashioned kind of vibe to it, but the way that it changes color. And then of course we also get like when it glitches, that's when you know that Jeff has really gotten angry and he's feeling vindictive.
He's like pulling the lights on the lamp right next to him, Fatal Attraction style.
A little bit, yeah. There's a bunny that shoots out at the end, right?
Yeah.
Bad joke.
But yeah, yes. But even with the coda, I think it works fine. It just it doesn't hit as hard as you're wanting it to, given what the previous 14 minutes we've witnessed.
Yeah, I think it feels like the short wants to pull a little bit of a punch to not say like, oh, this is a super Debbie Downer idea. Like it wants to just end on that shiny or slightly more comedic note.
It's definitely, but also we have our two, women who are doing this, but then we have the guy that is pulling out the fleshlight with his jizz to go clean it out for their next user.
Yes. Yeah. I did appreciate that. And like you always enjoy because that's happening in the background and it's kind of going off without somebody pointing and saying, hey, look at the jizz there. It's like, it makes it funnier.
And what's happening back there? Yes, absolutely.
Oh, bag of jizz. Got it. Okay.
So then the question becomes, though, Joe, could you see this stretch to a feature-length film? And granted, my comparison to her may be a bit reductive because it's a similar premise. It's not the same thing.
No, it's apt. Like Hyman actually acknowledges that was an inspiration. So you're on the right track.
Yeah.
I could see a feature-length version of this. My fear is that it would be a talking version of Christine. So I think you'd have to kind of tread carefully because we've seen killer cars. Like somebody said, oh, this is what if Knight Rider, but homicidal or like too intimate.
Okay, so it's so funny because as soon as you said like, like a talking version of Christine, that's a con for you, which I get. I was like, oh, that sounds awesome.
Okay. There we go. Different perspectives on.
But I guess though you're right though, because in Christine, because it's kind of the opposite in Christine though, because in Christine, Arnie is obsessed with the car rather than the opposite way
Vice
around.
versa.
So it's like instead of a gender flipped, it's a species flipped. Christine.
Indeed. Yes. Yeah. I do think it could work. Absolutely. I think it would be interesting to even build it out, like have David get out of the car and maybe interact with somebody, or maybe like have him start with a potential partner and see if the car has a way to like get rid of this person, or maybe build up a relationship over a longer period of time. Like a lot of shorts, this is, it's a concentrated period of time, not just in terms of the running length of the actual short, but like this takes place over 15 hours that they're driving together.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of in the same boat. I mean, like, it's so hard when we're doing this question with some shorts. I'm like, well, I mean, at this point, it's all speculation, right? Like, what would the creator do with this short? I'm into the whole species flipped Christine vibe. Okay. But again, at the end of the day, it's all in the matter of execution. I would prefer it to stay dark, though. I don't need this to be a horror comedy. I think they should keep the dark, kind of almost tragic bent to it. But that being said, maybe this could be like a like this is the prologue. And then, and we have our one of our guys, leaving a bad review on the app. But then the real film and the real tragedy picks up with the next user of the car.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that would definitely make sense.
Yeah, or maybe like you're primed for something kind of funny, but then oops, it's going to pull the rug out and make it tragic.
Okay, I like it. Yeah,
I don't know. But yeah, anyway, all right. Well, I guess listeners, let us know what you thought of Jeff Drives You. And I don't know, let us know if you're kind of on our wavelength with this ending and this coda, or if you or what you want to see from a feature-length version.
Yeah.
But on that note, until our next episode of Micro Queers, we can cross out Jeff Drives You.
Yes, and cross out Micro Queers.
Hello, I'm Shelby Scott, the host of Scare You to Sleep, a podcast where I tell you spooky bedtime stories full of creepy sound effects and music that is soothing yet unsettling to help immerse you into a world of horror. This is a show for those of us who have realized horror can be a strange but relaxing escape from reality. Speaking of escapes, sometimes I lead you through guided nightmares, like a guided meditation, but instead of flowery meadows, I take you on a journey through your own personal nightmare. So come get lost in the terror with me. Listen to Scare You to Sleep wherever you listen to podcasts, or find us online at bloody.fm. Sweet screams.